And I thought, oh, well, you know, I knew I was getting paid. It's not like it was my last dollar. But I put it in the offering. And I got home, and probably the next day I was dusting, and y'all know how I hate to dust, so it'd probably been a while since I dusted. And underneath the little lamp I had in the bedroom, there was $2 underneath the lamp. I said, so I gave, and God gave me back twice as much as I gave. And somebody said, well, I'm going to try that. And I thought, no, that's not the point I'm trying to make. I'm not trying to tell you if you give, God's going to double. God may double, he may triple, he may quadruple. I don't know, but that wasn't the point. The point that I was making was that God provides. You know, I wasn't going to go hungry without that dollar. Now, some people might have gone hungry without their last dollar. I wouldn't have gone hungry because there was food in the freezer. I might not have had, I couldn't have gone out and ate a steak, I don't guess, but there was food in the freezer. You seldom ever go to my house, there's not milk in the refrigerator. To be my age, I drink a lot of milk, but at my age, thank you God, I've never had a broken bone that I know of. I'm pretty sure I probably broke toes, but they don't do anything for toes, but I've never had a broken bone in my life that we know about. But I drink a lot of milk. Used to eat cheese. I don't eat cheese hardly ever anymore because my cholesterol just can't handle all this stuff. While Paul had to correct a number of problems within the church of Corinth, it appears that when it came to the matter of giving, he acknowledged their generous spirit, and his words seem more in line with encouragement to continue in this spirit of giving rather than a corrective for something that they were not doing. He was not saying you don't give enough. He was not telling them you don't give like you should give. He was commending them for the fact that they gave, and they gave abundantly. Now, again, things are not like they used to be, and you have to go back a ways to go back to the way they used to be. When we had the WMB, which people just don't know what that is, but that was the Women's Missionary Band. When the women kindly took the missions under their wings, and that's what they did, Almy, Debbie's grandma, I have to figure grandma versus great-grandma, Debbie's grandma, Almy used to make sheets and sell them. And if you've got any age on you and you've been around this church very long, you had a set of sheets and pillowcases that Sister Almy made because she didn't take no for an answer either. I kept a set that I bought from her. I didn't use them much because I never did have twin beds much. But I kept them forever because she made them, and I think they finally rotted. I had to throw them away. But you bought her sheets and pillowcases that she made, and that's how she raised $100 a year, because that's what the women did. They would each one pledge to give $100 to missions. Mama gave $100. There's a lot of, I'm sure Sister Dealey gave $100 every year. Sister Kathleen probably did. And I can't remember some of the older women that were around back in those days. Now, nowadays, we don't do that sort of stuff anymore. Some places still do, but we don't do it here, probably because we have budgets and we do other things, and we do it in other ways. But I can remember things that Mama did, and I can only talk about my mother because I don't know what your mama did. You know, I didn't get all into that, but I remember things that Mama did. You could build, at one point in time, they had something going on, you could build a church in Haiti for $500. I wonder if that little church is still standing, because I know Mama built a church. She bought bicycles for missionaries, somebody that was going to some foreign country somewhere, and the means of transportation were bicycles. She bought bicycles. And there was something else that she did for a mission that I don't remember now what it was, but something that she did, and I thought, and she was going on one day about what she did. I said, Mama, you really should say what you and Pa do. He don't do nothing. I give. I said, but Mama, you couldn't give if he didn't pay the light bill. You know, it's a gift. So it might, unless it comes out of your pocket, out of your spending money, then you really ought to give your husband a little bit of credit for being there and paying the light bill. Because if y'all's was as high last month as mine was, highest light bill I've ever had, highest light bill I have ever paid, I think, in my entire life. Even on rare occasions way back when I'd forget to pay it and have to double it. It ain't never been that high that I can remember. But, you know, you got to give a little bit of credit where it's due. But here in this particular church, the one thing that you didn't have to worry about is they gave, and they gave abundantly. Paul was commending them. It says we will see his encouragement to the Corinthian church, and we'll be able to draw from this to help in our understanding of what it means to demonstrate generosity. You have met people that seem to be, the words are generous to a fault. You know, they give and they give and they give, and you wonder, how in the world do you do this? How do you keep giving like you give? But you know, again, back to my $1. When you give, God gives in return. Not that God waits on your money. He don't. He don't really need our money. We need the Lord to bless us, but he don't necessarily need our money because the Bible says he owns, what is it? Cattle on 1,000 hills? That's right, isn't it? He owns the cattle of 1,000 hills. You know, if you got them kind of cows right now, I would like to buy beefsteak. No, beef roast. I want a beef roast. That's what it is, beef roast. Paul was on his third missionary journey here, and he took it upon himself to raise money from the various churches he had helped establish to help provide for the believers in Jerusalem who were in need. We will see Paul encourage the believers in Corinth to follow through on their commitment to help with this need. We do this quite often. You know, Brother Miller was here, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago? We give to that ministry because I think we fell in love with him. He came 1 year after the assembly, if I remember correctly, and he has been several times since then. Some of our local church members have been over and helped with. It started out, I think it was an orphanage, but I think it has kind of blossomed out into more than that now. But we give to that on a regular basis. I think our mission field, our church, I think our mission field is Israel and Paraguay, right? Cyprus? Okay, I left Cyprus out. Sorry about that. The golden text from 2 Corinthians 9:7 says, every man according to his purpose in his heart, so let him give, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loveth a cheerful giver. Give with a smile on your face. Don't begrudge what you give to other people. Don't begrudge what you give to the Lord, because look at what God has done for us. And I can say that with all the calm assurances that there are, because I can look around, and no offense to anybody, but I can tell nobody in here missed a meal. You know, not did we miss a meal, because God has blessed. You know, some of us grew up in a little bit harder times when we might have missed a meal somewhere along the line, but we don't miss meals now. I asked Mama one time years ago, I said, Mama, did I ever go hungry as a child? She said, no. Why? I said, because I just can't seem to get enough to eat. I wanted to eat all the time. When I had my gallbladder taken out, the doctor came by and he said, well, Helen, how you doing today? And I said, well, I need to talk to you. I got a problem. And he looked at me real funny. His operative patients never had a problem. You didn't. He was an excellent surgeon, Charles Collins. But I said, I need to talk to you. You got a problem. And he said, what? I said, you need to put it back in. He said, what? I said, I ain't found nothing I can't eat. You know, stuff you can't eat when you got a bad gallbladder. All of a sudden, that's all you want to eat because you can eat it now. And I was eating it. And just porking out all over the place. And I thought, well, Lord. But Lord bless us, and we like to do these things. But we are supposed to give from our heart, and give generously, and give a smile on our face. You don't need to go around and tell everybody, well, I gave $10 in the offering this morning. What'd you give? That's not what we need to know. It's none of our business what somebody else gave. That might embarrass you when you find out they give so much more than you might be giving right now. Quite often when we pray and ask God to help others who are in need, we may envision God miraculously making finances or other provisions appear. However, most often God works through people, encouraging them to be generous and to provide willingly from their own resources to help those in need. It doesn't mean that we're supposed to pray, Lord, will you please help Faye to give $1,000? God might be telling me that I need to start skimping a little bit over here and putting a little bit over here so I can give that $1,000. Because if God wanted you to give $1,000, he'd be telling you, he wouldn't tell me. I don't think God tells you to come tell me what I need to give. But we need to pray about stuff just like when we did our pledges and we gave the money just a year or so ago when we were raising money, looking to someday build that gymnasium that we may someday build. We may or we may not, who knows. But Paul encouraged the believers in Corinth to help meet the needs of the poor in Jerusalem. God works through the generosity of his people to help those who are in need. When you see somebody in need, we're supposed to help them. Now, I was at the gym the other week, and Bree happened to be with me, and I got tickled at her because there was this man that sits out there on the sidewalk all the time, and she said, Helen, do you think I could go over there and give him a bottle of water? And now, you know, the maternal instincts, even though that's my sister's grandchild, the maternal instincts, I said, honey, I don't think you would get that close to him. I said, he's probably harmless, but I don't know that he's harmless. And she said, well, he was digging in the garbage when I came up. So before we left, she asked me again. She said, will you come over here to, is it Little Caesars out there? Come over here to Little Caesars and let me get him a pizza. And I said, okay, but don't ever do that when you're by yourself. Just don't. I just have that issue. You know, she's young, and I just don't know. But she went in, she had evidently texted them or whatever they do, and they'd already had the pizza ready for her, and she just walked over and gave it to the guy and came back. But she wanted to give. Again, Mama Bear over here was saying, don't get too close. Don't get too close. I don't know these people. You don't know these people. He's probably harmless. But you don't know whether he's harmless or not. Be careful. Don't get too close. And I shouldn't have done that because it would discourage her probably the next time she feels the need to give to people. I may have discouraged that from happening. I hope I didn't. We're starting out in 2 Corinthians 8, 1 through 7. It says, moreover, brethren, we do you to wit of the grace of God bestowed on the churches in Macedonia. How that in a great trial of affliction and abundance of their joy and their deep poverty abounded unto the riches of their liberty. I've been reading a different translation, and this don't sound right, so I got to make sure I'm on the right scripture. When my eyeballs like they can be sometimes, yes, I'm right. For in their power I bear record, yea, and beyond their power they were willing of themselves, praying us with much entreaty that we would receive the gift and take upon us the fellowship of the ministering of the saints. Well, I cannot get my book to cooperate this morning. And this they did, not as we hoped, but first gave their own selves to the Lord and unto us by the will of God, insomuch that we desired Titus, that as he had begun, so he would also finish in you the same grace also. Therefore, as ye abound in everything, in faith and utterance and knowledge, and in all diligence and all your love to us, see that ye abound in this grace also. Paul encouraged the believers at Corinth to be generous in their giving for the needs of the saints in Jerusalem. Evidently, the saints in Jerusalem had gone through a rough time, and they were having fun. Are you cold? Oh, Lord. Lost my chain of thought. Look at you wrapped up in a coat because I'm sweating. Evidently, Jerusalem saints, the church at Jerusalem were going through a rough time. They were poor. Maybe they were having, the economy, there you go, the economy in Jerusalem weren't what it ought to be or what it had been in times past. And the church as a whole was suffering. The members were suffering. And Paul is saying to the people in Corinth, basically he's reminding them of how good the Lord has been to them and how God has blessed them abundantly and how they ought to give. Now, I'm paraphrasing a whole lot. How they ought to give to people that were less fortunate. And evidently the church at Corinth had been very good. It says, as an example for the Corinthians, Paul explained the willingness of the churches in Macedonia to contribute generously to this need, despite the fact that they were facing a great trial of affliction and were themselves experiencing deep poverty. He's bringing up another church that's having a problem with money as well. But he's saying even though Macedonia is having their own financial problems, they have given abundantly to the Jerusalem people, to the Jerusalem saints, to the church at Jerusalem. And today we see that happening. Some churches, almost their entire ministry is built on giving, on the missionary, on the mission. And everybody in here knows you don't have to get on an airplane or a ship and go across the water to a foreign country to have a mission field. Sometimes your mission field may be 3 doors down. Sometimes your mission field are people that you run into in various and sundry places. And sometimes the people in need are right here under your feet. It amazes me the number of people that we see going through the food bank here. And our church is not the only church in the area that does the food bank. But there are some needy people in Richmond County. If you go down certain streets and see people walking the streets with apparently nowhere to go, it's sad. It's sad. But I'm thinking, this past week, I think the total number of families that we served was 211. And maybe the total number of people, I think, was just south of 500. 490 something, I think, Frances was here, she would remember. I don't necessarily remember. It says, in the midst of what they were facing, they exhibited riches of liberality in helping with the offering that was being taken for the needy in Jerusalem. Their giving even exceeded Paul's expectations. Sometimes when you get up and you start asking people to help with this project or that project, you get more than you expected. People will give more generously than you thought they would give. Or people might be in a better situation than you thought they were in, and they give out of the abundance of the heart. They give. And that if James were here, he testified one time, and this has been years and years and years ago. I think him and Sandra were on their way to the assembly, I think, and they stopped to get something to eat. And some man that they had never seen before just walked up to them and said, I feel led. And he gave them an offering and walked away. But I don't know what about them attracted his attention. God knew what they needed or what they didn't need, and I know they're not the only people that's ever happened for. But God moved on the scene and moved on somebody's heart, and they shared out of what they had, they shared with somebody else. The reason these believers who were experiencing severe persecution and poverty were willing to give generously to others was the grace of God bestowed on the churches of Macedonia. God's grace here is not his grace to offer forgiveness of sin through the gospel, but his empowering of believers to do that which they would not be able to do on their own. If God don't bless you, you can't bless other people. You know, and I could ask the question, even though I'm not, but how many people in here, even though the economy is in the tanks right now, how many people in here don't have what you need? Now, I'm not talking about having what you want, but having what you need. Now, a friend of mine called me the other day, and she said, Helen, if you knew her, you would understand. She said, Helen, I'm getting worried. I went to the grocery store yesterday, and you know everything is going up. I had to go buy some coffee, not because I didn't have coffee, but I'm afraid they'll run out. And I thought, oh, my blessed Lord, I hadn't thought about that. So guess who went and bought coffee? People buying coffee and putting it in the cabinet. Because this particular friend not that long ago called me one day, and she said, Helen, I'm losing my mind. She said, I went and bought some coffee, and I brought it home, and she said, I ain't found it yet. She said, I don't know where I put it. And I thought, well, once upon a time, a long time ago, I went to the grocery store, and I came home, and I looked in the refrigerator for the milk that I knew I had just bought. There was no milk in the refrigerator. This is when the boys were little. I thought, did one of them get the milk? But I don't think they were home, so I couldn't blame it on them. And I got to looking in the house. Guess where it was? It was in the cabinet beside the box of cereal. That makes perfectly good sense. You can't eat cereal without milk. Somehow that made perfectly good sense, I guess, at that time. But you're right. But she said, you know, if I run out of coffee, what will I do? She drinks decaf. Drink a glass of water. What difference does it make? But she was about to have a stroke. But you know, things are bad. It's bad right now. I'm trying to learn to live without eggs. I had just got to where I ate them. I mean, like every day. You know, I don't mean I didn't eat them, but it was not my breakfast thing. It was not my breakfast thing. And then I got into the habit of every morning I had an egg. Hey, my Lord, you're going to have to send him away. Send that child off somewhere. Let him buy his own eggs. I've been threatening to put chickens in the backyard for a year. I'm going to get them eventually. Yay, yay. I've had plenty of people say, well, I'll help you. Well, okay, well, let me just get my brain settled and let it warm up enough I can get out in the backyard. Right now, I just can't do it. Well, I just got through reading a continuing education on avian flu, and for the most part, you're not going to get it. You know, I don't know what everybody's excited about, and if you could make a gazillion flu vaccines, I don't know why you can't do that. The issue to me is they make, I don't know what they still do or not, but they used to make flu vaccines out of the egg whites. So, or the little thing inside the eggshells. But anyway, we digress. While it would be difficult to expect people so overwhelmed with suffering and poverty to give to others, God, through his grace, empowered the churches in Macedonia to provide generously for the need of those in Jerusalem. In light of God's given grace, Paul encouraged the believers in Corinth to follow this example in their own giving. You know, sometimes you can be praying and you almost hear the Lord audibly tell you to do this. do this or do this. Go and do this. And sometimes, I think, Lord, that's so out of character for me. Is that really something you want me to do? Because, some things are just out of character for me. As much as I like to talk, it's hard for me to go up and start a conversation with a complete stranger. Now, I ain't having problems as long as I was working and in my environment. But to just walk up and start a conversation with somebody I don't know, it's just hard for me to do. And that's hard for people to believe as much as I talk. But I really do have a little bit of trouble when I try to talk to people I don't know. It's just not in my nature to be that friendly, I guess. Eagerness to give, 2 Corinthians 9, 1 through 5 says, for as touching the ministering to the saints, it is superfluous for me to write to you, for I know the forwardness of your mind, for which I boast of you to them of Macedonia, that Achaia was ready a year ago, and your zeal hath provoked very many. Yet have I sent the brethren, lest our boasting of you should be in vain in this behalf, that, as I said, ye may be ready. Lest haply, if they of Macedonia come with me, and find you unprepared, we say not ye, should be ashamed in this same confident boasting. Therefore I thought it necessary to exhort the brethren that they would go before unto you, and make up beforehand your bounty, whereof ye had noticed before, that the same might be ready as a matter of bounty and not as of covetousness. And again, he is basically saying, get ready, we're going to take up an offering. He's letting them know, and he is saying that they need to be eager to give. The Bible says what about a giver? What does God love? A cheerful giver. Not a person who says, well, I know I'm going to have to do this. I just, well, go ahead and do it now. That's not what the Lord expects. The Lord expects, okay, preacher's taking up an offering for a church somewhere that's in need. We need to be the first people that jump up there to say, I'll give. And then the Lord will let you know how much you should give. Noting that it was unnecessary for him to write to them about giving to the saints of Jerusalem, because he had confidence in them and their eagerness to help. He believed he had enough confidence in these people that he had helped establish that they would give, and that they would give willingly to somebody that was less fortunate. It's not that hard to look around and find somebody less fortunate than you are. Again, I had this conversation with a friend of mine not long ago. She was having a little bit of issue, and she was going on, and she said, but you know something, Helen, I look around, and no matter how bad a shape I'm in, and no matter how bad things get, I don't have to go far to find somebody in worse shape than I'm in. I said, that is so true. That is so true. All you have to do is open your eyes, and you see people that's not in as good a shape as you're in. They may not be They may not be in as good a physical shape as you're in. They may not be in as good a financial shape as you're in. They may not be in as good a mental place as you are right now. And for that, we should always be grateful to God. There's an old country song, and I told somebody, I said, I got where I have to sing that song. Used to could get the blues so easy. When I tell people I used to have pity parties, oh my Lord, have pity parties where I could just sit down in the middle of the floor and just cry my heart out over what, I don't know. But just sit down in the middle of the floor and have a good cry. And I tell people, when you ain't invited, when I have a pity party, I do not need you. I can feel sorry for me all by myself. I don't need any help. But that old country song, in case y'all don't know, there was an old country song and there was a line in there that said, I can't even get the blues no more. When God moves and blesses and does, it's hard to sit down and have a pity party, because God gives. And through the generosity and the love of God, we give. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about people that suffer from depression, and I know that's a very real thing. That's not what I'm talking about. I wasn't depressed. I was feeling sorry for myself. It's not the same thing. I was just having pity parties. Paul credited the willingness and the ability of the believers in Macedonia to give to this need to the working of God's grace in their lives. The Corinthians' giving can no doubt be credited to the same cause. It was God at work in their lives that stirred them on to such generosity. Despite Paul's many criticisms of the Corinthians, he chose to commend them in the area of giving. I had to look a word up because I couldn't pronounce it. I wasn't really sure what it meant. I had to look it up. Paul was quite effusive, I think is the way you say it, with his praise, going beyond what might be expected. The definition for that was expressing great or excessive emotion or enthusiasm. Paul was enthusiastic about his praise to them. They were going above what was expected. All too often, it is easy to focus on somebody's faults, failing to see what God might be doing in and through their lives. We cannot see what is in a person's heart. Now, we may see the outside, but you can do all kinds of things to the outside to make it look different. Sometimes, like I say, I had to make sure I was up this morning, had my shower early because I had to get my hair dry. Now, Brian Keith called me to tell me all that stuff. He said, Mama, this was Brian, Mama, you might need to make plans to leave a little early this morning. That storm just went through up here, and it's supposed to hit just about time you'd be going out the door to church. Thank you, son. Thank you. I said, I've already had my shower. I've already dried my hair. I was afraid the power would go off, and if I can't dry my hair, we got a problem. You better be ready to teach. You better be ready to teach, because if the hair can't get dry, we're in trouble. But it should be mentioned here that Paul was not blind to the problems within the Corinthian church. They had problems. He had already addressed that with them. He explained to them that he wanted to make sure the generosities they had expressed was realized when he came to receive the actual collection. They'd already said, I'm going to give this amount of money. We're going to do this. We're going to send this amount of money. So Paul is saying, this is what you promised. I'm coming to get it. Be sure it's ready. Kind of like the checks in the mail. I want to make sure that he picks the check up and he's going to give. As a matter of fact, I think they hand-delivered all this. He knew they needed encouragement to follow through with their intended giving, but nevertheless, Paul chose to praise them, even though they might need to be prodded along. Paul still praised them for the fact that they were willing. Sometimes if you're getting as bad as I'm getting on some days, I'm willing when I remember what I told you I'd do. I told somebody not long ago, I said, I'm not losing my mind. I just have. Somebody said one time that, and I'm not going to call the name, but somebody said one time, I believe I've got Alzheimer's. I believe I've got Alzheimer's. And I said, why would you think you have Alzheimer's? Well, I went to introduce somebody the other day, and I knew who they were, but I couldn't think of their name. Well, I do that all the time. I said, well, that's not Alzheimer's. That's not Alzheimer's. And they came to me a few weeks later, and they said, oh, Helen, I went to the doctor. And he said, I don't have Alzheimer's. I said, I never thought you did. He goes on to say, this is how he explained it. Your brain is like a train station, and you got all these tracks running through there. You got too many trains on your tracks. And so sometimes I got one too many trains on my track, and one of them's got to get derailed before the other one can get up there and go. So I'll get there eventually when I stop long enough to remember what day of the week it is. One of the most important lessons to be learned in this section in the power of God's grace to enable believers to do that which is beyond their own abilities. The Macedonian believers who were experiencing significant persecution and poverty were empowered by God's grace to give to others who were in need. Even when you're in need yourself, the Lord will move on you to help another person. The Lord will move on you, or you will just, out of your generosity. I have seen some people that I don't even know that they profess Christianity. I don't even know that they are saved. And I'm not standing on judgment. I'm just saying I've never heard that person testify to whether or not they're saved. And they are generous, very thoughtful. Everything that comes along, they want to give. They want to participate. They do things I don't even think about. And it amazes me what some people do. It's just amazing. In addition, the believers at Corinth who were falling short, far short, in so many areas were themselves enabled to excel in the area of generosity. They may fall short in other ways, but they were more than willing to give to people less fortunate than they were. And that is what people look at. For Christian people, a lot of times that's what people look for, is whether or not the church or the people of the church are generous to give to people in need. Plan to give 1 Corinthians, backing up now to 1 Corinthians 16, 1 through 4. Now concerning the collection for the saints, as I have given order to the churches at Galatia, even so do ye upon the first day of the week. Let every one of you lay by him in store, as God hath prospered him, that there be no gatherings when I come. And when I come, whomsoever ye shall approve by your letters, them will I send to bring your liberality into Jerusalem. And if it be meet that I go also, they shall go with me. Here again, Paul is providing the Corinthian believers with an important principle, and that is the principle of planned giving. Sometimes you need to plan what you're going to give, because sometimes you got to lay aside a little bit of money every week. If you promise to give this amount of money a month to something, then you may have to lay aside. If you may not be able to buy a dozen eggs this week, you need to lay aside a little bit of money, so that at the end of the week or the end of the month, what you have promised to give, you give. And that's what he's telling them. Sometimes you have to plan things ahead of time. Now, this past week, I was sick. I just did not feel good, and I could not figure out. As a matter of fact, I don't remember now if it was Sunday night or Monday night. I was getting ready to go to the ER. I just knew I was having a heart attack. I thought, well, Lord, is this the way I'm going to go? I thought I might be going to stay for the rapture, Lord, but I reckon I'm not going. And then I stopped and I thought about it, and I thought, well, this is what I'm going to do. And I did that. In a little bit, I went on to bed, and I gradually started getting better. But as I gradually started getting better, I had to plan some things because I had some stuff I had to take care of. I didn't want to go out of the house. It took everything I could muster, Brother Cruz, to get here Wednesday night. I just didn't have the heart. I was still dragging. But I had things to do Wednesday. If I can get out and do those things, I can come to church. I had to get out because I'd been sick and hadn't mailed the grandchildren's Valentine cards. I had to go mail them cards. And then I had to go get some gift cards to go in them cards. Once I put them gift cards in there, the things wouldn't seal. I had to go back and I had to go buy some tape because I didn't have any tape in the car. So I could tape them. And then I got some money. I thought, well, I just go on and buy the gas while I'm out before I run out of gas. And then I thought, if I can do all that stuff, I can definitely go to church. You know? So here I came. I might not have been the best, but Lord, I was here. But sometimes, and it says right here, so much in life can be chaotic. And if plans are not made, things will not get done. Paul, no doubt, understood this fact. And so when it came to the collection for the needy in Jerusalem, he instructed the Corinthians to have a plan. You need to have a plan. I got where I make plans all the time, then I forget where I wrote them down at. But I have my plan. On Monday, this is what I'm going to do. On Tuesday, I'm going to do this. On Wednesday, my bathroom cleaning days are Wednesdays and Saturdays. That's when they get cleaned. The rest of the time, they get straightened. They get cleaned those 2 days. Y'all know there's a difference in cleaning and straightening, right? But those are the days that get cleaned. Then I have days I'm going to do this, and I keep putting down dusting, but guess what? It never gets done. I just race it and do something else. I made my plans for the beginning of this year. In January, I was going to do cleaning out cabinets, closets, and drawers. I got about half that done. February, I was going to prepare to paint. I was going to undertake painting ceilings. I about talked myself out of that. And then March, I was going to do something else. In April, I'm going to do something else. But I had all that stuff planned out because I won't do it. Even with it planned, I probably won't do it, but I made a plan. But the plan he presented was that offerings should be collected on the first day of every week, on Sunday. They were going to go ahead and collect their money and get things done. You know, sometimes if you're not careful, you'll forget something if you don't plan it out. About 3 years ago, might have been longer than that, I forgot to pay the water bill. I still don't think I got one that month. And do y'all know what it costs you if you don't pay your water bill? And I watched the man cut it off. I had just had a shower, came in and was getting ready to wash the dishes, and all of a sudden I didn't have any water. I thought, oh my Lord, is Scotty home? Something's wrong. You know, Scotty's a handyman. And I thought, is that crazy man out there having the audacity to cut off my water by mistake? Well, now it's been drafted, and I've paid it ahead of time so much, so the county owes me a little over, close to $400 back on my water bill. But if you forget to pay one time, and you pay all that stuff you have to pay at one time, that little $27.50 that you pay every month, y'all don't get to do that if you're in the city limits. But in the county, that's what we do. But it costs you. You need to plan. You need to know. You need to have it set aside. So if you know that we're going to take up an offering for missions on such and such a day, you might need to start setting aside a little bit ahead of time, especially as the economy gets worse. Now, I know a lot of people have got a lot of expectations, but I don't know that I have that kind of faith in people anymore. It is believed that those who were part of the early church began to meet regularly on Sundays. And if the churches were meeting regularly on that day, it would make sense for Paul to suggest that Sunday would be the day to collect the offering for the needy in Jerusalem. If you need something from people, get it on Sunday. Of course, nowadays people get paid on Friday. They're broke by Sunday. But, you have to sometimes plan. Go ahead and put your money back before you go off and get in on a good sale and spend money that you was planning on using somewhere else. It would appear that the need was great because he was organizing the giving over a wide area. He didn't just go to one church. He went to more than one church to tell them the people at Jerusalem are in need. If we knew that the church, I'll pick on Dean. If we knew that the church in Guy was in need, we would be willing to give to that church to help them in whatever need that they had. You can't do it all, but you can help. And if Guy was in trouble, Hamlet, Rockingham, Laurinburg, Laurel Hill, LRB, Norman, wherever else that there are churches, if everybody gave, then that would take care of that problem. And, I can remember if I thought real hard when we probably were the ones that were in need. Paul mentioned that, that he had already read to the churches of Galatia on the way to collect the offerings, and he also noted that he was planning to travel through Macedonia, attempting to solicit donations from the churches there as well. So the need must have really been great that Paul felt the need to include so many churches in the effort to get things done. We have given, when the storm went through the mountains, we gave. They continue to need. And you keep seeing, and I was praying the other day because as much as I would like to see a little bit of snow, those people got snow and ice, and some of them still have no place to live. There still remains a lot that needs to be done. Back to 2 Corinthians 8. I speak not by commandment, by occasion of the forwardness of others, and to prove the sincerity of your love. For ye know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he were rich, yet for your sakes he became poor, and ye through his poverty might be rich. And herein I give my advice. For this is expedient for you who have begun before, not only to do, but also to be forward a year ago. Now therefore perform the doing of it, that as there was a readiness to will, so there may be a performance also out of that which ye have. For if there be first a will in mind, it is accepted according to that a man hath, and not according to that he hath not. For I mean not that other men be eased, and ye be burdened, but by equality, that now is the time, for your abundance may be at a supply for their want, that their abundance also may be a supply for your want, that there be equality. As it is written, he that had gathered much had nothing over, and he that gathered little had no like. As the model to encourage their giving, Paul presented the willingness of the part of Christ to give himself for them, noting that though he was rich, yet for our sakes, for their sakes, he became poor. Christ, through himself, though himself was God, was willing to give up everything related to his divine status in order to come to earth and help those that were in desperate need. We were in desperate need when we came before the Lord seeking salvation, seeking a cleansing, seeking the peace. And I still go over it. Everybody in here would have to probably testify that the day, the night, the hour you got saved, that is the best night's sleep you have ever had in your life, because you were at peace. You were at peace because of what the Lord did. Christ gave up heaven to come down here to live basically poor, to bring us salvation, something he didn't have to do, something that he willingly did. And I still say that old song that they sang, he could have called 10,000 angels, I think, at any point in time. Christ could have said, I don't want to do this. And that's all he would have had to do. But he prayed, and he got willing to do what the Father said. And if the Lord had to pray to get willing to do what God wanted him to do, then definitely we need to pray to get willing to do what God wants us to do. Paul asked on the Corinthian Paul called on the Corinthians to follow the example of Christ in giving to those who were in desperate need in Jerusalem. He mentioned that the Corinthians were the first not only to give, but also to have the desire to do so. He realized that the initial impulse to give may diminish over time, so he encouraged them to follow through with their commitment. Often people can have good intentions when it comes to helping others, but as time goes by, that commitment can wane, and the danger of failing to follow through can be very real. You need to do proportional giving. People that have should give more. You should give according to your means. This is generally a good rule to follow when considering charitable giving. It is important to remember that it is necessary to listen to the Lord in the matter of giving, since he may cause some to sacrificial giving. An example is seen in Mark, if you want to go back and read that scripture, Mark 12, 41 through 44, where Christ commended the poor widow for giving all that she had. The widow lady went in and other people were giving more money. But when she got there, and I'm going to use a penny because that's the smallest coin we have, she had 1 penny to give and that's all she had. But the Lord said basically she gave more than everybody else because they gave out of their abundance, but she gave everything she had. That penny was all she had, and she was willing to give it and to share it. Out of time. Let me just go up here and read the highlights. Joyful giving, this is in Corinthians, 2 Corinthians 9, 16 through 12. In these verses, it introduced 3 additional principles by which Paul wanted them to be aware. First, he explained the connection between sowing and reaping. You can't go outside, and of course at my house, I'm not a farmer, but you can't go outside and plant 1 bean in the ground and expect to get a crop of beans. You can't go outside and plant 1 tomato vine and expect to get a gazillion tomatoes. You cannot, if you're going to have, you have got to plant to be able to reap. If you want to get a lot, then you need to plant a lot. Just as a farmer, when he chooses to sow sparingly, then you should know that you're going to get a very minimal number of crops in return. When minimal giving is the rule, the extent of the harvest will generally follow in kind. Second, Paul instructed the Corinthians that each of them must follow through with the amount that they had determined to give. Finally, their giving was not to be done grudgingly or out of a sense of duty, but with an attitude of joy. Paul then reminded them that God was the one able to provide for them graciously in abundance, and that God's generosity was manifested so that they would have the means to help others who were in need. On 2 different occasions, the Gospels record Jesus' feeding of the multitudes who had come to hear him speak. In both instances, the Gospels record that there was an overabundance of food that remained after the people were fed. In feeding the 5,000, left over there were 12 baskets full of food. And then when he fed the 4,000, there were 7 baskets of food left over. In each instance, the Lord bountifully blessed the people, going far beyond the mere act of satisfying their hunger, providing for more than was actually needed. The generosity that leads to God's glory. 2 Corinthians 9, 12 through 15, Paul explained additional benefits that would result from the generous giving of the Corinthian church. Not only would their generosity help meet the needs of the impoverished Jewish people in Jerusalem, but it would also result in thanks being given to God for both the giver and the recipient of that gift. Paul mentioned that their giving would also result in more than the thanks given to God by those in need, whose needs had been met, but it would also lead to other people giving glory to God when they heard of the generosity that had been demonstrated. In line with the very words of Christ, Paul wanted the Corinthians to know that their actions had additional benefits, bringing glory to God. All things that we do, everything that we do, should be done to the glory of God. It is easy to see our giving in terms of meeting the specific needs of a group of individuals. However, these words of Paul help us to see that the far-reaching impact of our giving. Beyond meeting specific physical needs, our giving can serve as a basis for God being honored and glorified in the eyes of those receiving the gift as well as others. We must allow this reality to serve as an encouragement for our giving to those in need, as well as our other actions on behalf of the Lord. All things that we do should be done for the glory of God, not for your glory, not for somebody to pat you on the back and tell you what a wonderful job you're doing, but that God gets glory through your actions. Whew. Any questions or comments? Do y'all know how hard it is for a true Southerner to talk that fast? Thank you for your attendance and for your attention. And remember, if you haven't picked up your next quarterly, they're up here on the front row.